All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to Get Read Live, our live stream we do here in the writing department and for the Writing Center each and every Wednesday during the winter term. I'm your host, Dr. Rich Scheibner. As always, back with you. So excited to do these streams throughout the term. And I'm particularly excited about today's stream on writing and as anti-racism. It's Black History Month. In addition to that, we have numerous events coming up. And so what I want to do is promote those events and some really exciting editorial practices and authors who are practicing inclusion, Black excellence, etc. So before we get started, I have a couple things to say about before today's stream started, as is tradition now here in Get Read Live, like we like to do here. Want to once again thank Writing Center Director John Sufferin and the Writing Center staff, as well as the Writing Center Department and our chair, Andrea McKenzie, for supporting another term of Get Read Live. If you'd like to see any of our past streams, you can find them in two places, as always, right here on our YouTube page that we have linked. Let me just go ahead and pull that up for us so we can see what's going on. So as not to echo ourselves a couple times, we'll see if we can make that work. Yes, so last week we talked about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. Maybe after the break, we'll get into some discussions about what ChatGPT has to say about writing and anti-racism. Very curious to see what kind of arguments it can kind of conceptualize during, when prompted to. Especially because it was trained around 2021, and more and more exciting projects are coming out, more critical conversations about writing and anti-racism practices are coming out. So we could see what's coming out from there. We talked about fall writing goals 2 weeks ago, and we've got a number of things coming up and some very exciting guests as well that I've been in conversation with. Also, we have just a little preview of what's coming up. We're talking about writing and as collaborating and traveling, which will be based on a trip I have coming up to Norway, actually, where I'm doing some research out there. Revision, virtual reality, intervening in a conversation, presenting and composing yourself. So for many of these, you could expect some special guests to be a part of these kind of conversations because, that's what writing is all about, that kind of community and building that community and bringing in the exciting voices who are addressing these topics and embodying them, I may say. Also on the Writing Center page, which we're looking at right now, we have a number of links. The preview, of Get Read Live and what's coming up. We have that, of course. We have multiple links to one-on-one appointments. If you've never done a one-on-one appointment, always recommend that. We have live appointments. We have online paper submissions, drop-in sessions that are not just constrained to the writing department. We have an accessibility specialist. We also have a multilingual studio. We have workshops running all the time, folks. In fact, I'm really excited to just build some hype for Dr. Christopher Morris's anti-racist writing workshop, which is coming up tomorrow. So if you look at our workshops here, I hosted one last week on research methods. Dr. Morris is focusing on anti-racist writing. We have focal points on organizing your drafts, revisions, and sentencing, and analyzing your argument. These are all free, folks, especially if you're a York student. Please sign up. We love having company. We love talking about writing with you all. So yeah, do check that out. That's tomorrow, by the way, the anti-racist writing workshop. And then there's another session of that on March 23rd. All of these workshops run twice during the term, so we'd love to see you there. Okay, so let's get into our topic for the day. Again, writing and as anti-racism. And a number of things that we can kind of think about around that topic. The first thing I want to mention to you all is just something, I don't think I brought this up last year when we were covering this topic. So I'm just trying to find my monitor so I can make sure that you can all see that sort of stuff as well. Okay, so this is a bit harder to see it. So I've crossed out the editor who wrote this to me. Oftentimes when I'm writing and I'm working on sources, right? I've mentioned this maybe sort of in passing a couple times, but I used to be a professional journalist before I went into academia. That is, like, went back for my master's program and all that sort of stuff, and then later a PhD in rhetoric. I was a working journalist and was freelancing quite a bit, living in a Midwest city, going out. And one of my tasks as an editor and a writer was to go out and just ask sort of what they call like person on the street, or they used to say like man on the street, which again kind of has a gender bias to it. You know, I would go out and ask a bunch of questions to people. Let me see if I can even find this. Sin Weekly, you tell us. So it was kind of like a, let's see if we can find the image here. Yeah, it's probably a bit hard to find here. Let's see, probably, yeah, not going to be there. That's one thing I forgot to pull. But basically what we were doing is we would ask people timely questions about a certain topic, like who are you excited to win, you know, this year's Super Bowl, for example, or, you know, just sort of entertainment questions and so forth. And what I would do is take all their pictures and put their quote below it. And obviously you can't see it now here on the screen, but you know, Cincinnati Sin Weekly, it was responsible for putting that out. It was a one-page layout and so forth. I could probably find it on the break, actually. But, you know, there was a kind of what I would say like a color bias to this experience for me, because I was, as a, you know, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, was going out and doing these photos, and mostly just finding folks who looked like me, you know, white men, women, kind of thinking on that binary level, right? Things like that. And that just happened sort of over and over. And I still have saved this email, and it's a good way to remind myself, like, when I'm working on sourcing now in the future, whether it's through academia or freelance work, of what this editor said. So the title was just white. That's all it said. And as she had told me, just a reminder, You Tell Us This Week is very white and very young. I don't think any of them hit 30 or probably even 27. And that's because the journal or the weekly I was working for mainly tried to think about like about 21 to 35 or 40. We wanted that kind of younger demographic. I know it's a hard line to draw since we don't want them too old either, right? So they're thinking mostly about like age at this point, but usually pretty good. So I'll chalk it up to an off week. And, you know, I don't know. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if that was actually an off week for me. It was, you know, it was standard protocol. I'd go out and just have to really step out, what I would say at the time, out of my comfort zone. And, you know, I would go around parts of the suburbs and neighborhoods and interview anybody. And it was just really easy for me to find people who looked just like me. The difficult part was doing the opposite. Right, going out and finding diverse voices, people who didn't look like me racially or demographically. And so I just hold this to me as like a kind of reminder. I think that it was just a passive thing that the editor had said to me, but I really valued it, and it struck me like from then on to continue to do that. And also just focusing on this for a bit. I used to be a music reporter, and, you know, my bias was even sonic. I would always list all the indie shows that were coming up. And I remember posting something on our blog that I had, and maybe I could even find that. So sound check. Let's see here. I don't know if I have. Yep. Okay. So here's my music blog. This is what I used to write for. So it was up there, and I would go through and talk about, you know, hot acts that were coming through or things like that. And I remember specifically after I gave a preview of what was coming up for the month, you know, somebody commented on one of the posts, like, what about all these events that are happening outside of the indie space? What about these R&B and sort of rap concerts, hip hop concerts that you just haven't even acknowledged? And, you know, that was a good eye opener. I didn't think of it at the time as offensive or anything like that. I was like, wow, thank you. That's interesting. You know, and I remember being uncomfortable and going, oh, wow. You know what I mean? I didn't mean to do it that way. But I think that it's important to just be open about those sort of failures, right? I mean, how we can grow from them, and to be called out in certain ways. So that's just a little acknowledgement about kind of where I'm coming from, why I'm interested in this topic, and really just bringing more visibility to to writers and scholars who are often marginalized, whether through citation practice, the color of their skin, etc. Okay, so part of this was inspired by recent calls in the field of writing studies for scholars and editors to practice more inclusion in publishing, such as bringing in more BIPOC and multiple marginalized and underrepresented reviewers on editorial boards, as well as mentoring junior scholars through, what we often find are rigorous submission processes. When I teach the research methods workshop, I'm often thinking about how Google Scholar, for example, you can search up a term and it will give you some of the most cited work when you're looking up. And what does that do for us if we're trying to find, I guess I would say less cited sort of stories? We can cite Aristotle, for example. You could say Aristotle on rhetoric. And that's been picked over and over and over, right? 230 citations just on the rhetoric of Aristotle. I mean, this is like a very, very old book. But what about those articles that have been cited in the last 2 or 3 years? What about those who have been cited or have written about Aristotle in lesser known journals, right? We have top tier journals in the field of writing studies that are quite big, right? And I think as a scholar, we're expected to kind of be publishing in those spaces, citing those spaces. But what if we turn elsewhere, right? Into more exciting, like underground archives, things like that. Maybe something that's been cited once. I think that's a constant challenge that I want to think about as a researcher as well. So if you want to come to that workshop, I'll be speaking a bit more about that in our research methods one. Definitely check that out. It's I find it really interesting to think about like recruiting, speaking with various populations and so forth, and how we kind of sit with that as researchers. Okay, so one thing I want to turn to is I had a conversation last night with the editorial team of Inventio. It is a student journal that's operated by the Professional Writing Student Association here in the writing department. And it accepts submissions from all current undergraduate students, regardless of program, faculty, year, or school. And so I was excited to just check in with the team and ask them a bit about, sort of what goes on behind the scenes, what issues are coming up. And one thing that caught my attention when I was looking at, let me pull this up real quick. When I was looking at Inventio's, there was a news post that we did, and there was several quotations, is the writer, editor relationship, the collaboration. If we look back at the field, which I'll pull up, and I talked about last year, writing studies is encouraging us to think about this kind of mentorship relationship rather than being gatekeepers. It's a tough line to draw, right? I think if you're talking with an editor about an idea, pre-submission perhaps, or while it's in process, that you're trying to get around the process, right? But I kind of argue it's even more rigorous because you're entering this dialogue, you're trying to make it a better project, and you're not gatekeeping. So that's something I've been doing in my own editorial role, but I was enamored that Inventio does the same thing. And I gotta say too, you'll hear in this chat in just a minute, it's nice that this is called Inventio. I edit for a journal that has a section called Inventio. So I was like, I've got to speak with them. And particularly just about this idea of mentorship and publishing writers who are across like disciplines and journals, etc. So do check this out. It's a really fantastic read, but also the link to Inventio is in the section. So what I'm going to do briefly is go ahead and cut to this interview that I did with Dunya, who is an editor with the journal, and I'll pull up this just real quickly. They had 2 issues come out recently, and they're publishing even more new things coming out. So Dunya Dunaran is assistant editor-in-chief with the journal, and we spoke for a bit just about generally like how the practices of the journal work. I think this should come through okay. I've just got to switch over to the actual interview, and now you won't see this at the same time as you see this interview, but we can just kind of listen closely to how the journal really conceptualizes editorial processes. Okay, so let me just mute this a little bit, and we'll turn over here. Okay, then I'll go to the share. When I'm doing this on my own, it's like be my own sort of broadcaster and stuff like that. It's quite fun. Okay, let's go over here, and I will post this here for me. And then I may pause in a bit and just kind of annotate it because you could see a double effect kind of going on. All right. Things Inventio and editing. So, all right, here we go. Hey, Dunya, how you doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. I'm ready to talk to you about all things Inventio and editing. So what is your role? If you want to tell everybody what your role is with the journal.
So I'm the assistant editor-in-chief. So Lisa, my editor-in-chief, she does everything with like the authors. She goes back and forth with them. I kind of just do like what she needs me to do, basically, like sometimes drafting emails, like helping with like giving her an opinion on stuff, going back and forth with our editors, running meetings, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And every year, it seems like the journal's getting student editors on board. How does that process work?
So we put out a call for editors after like whichever issue is published. And then people can just apply for it. They just like put what year they're in, what program they're in. And then recently, like for this issue, we started doing an interview process with the editors just to kind of like get to know them, since we had a lot more people apply for it. So yeah, we just, see why they like editing, why they want to do it, stuff like that. And then we send them an editing quiz just to see like where they're at, like with copy editing and stuff like that. And then depending on like how they do on that, will help them kind of will help them like learn how to edit and stuff like that, like in meetings. And then we'll have like a few meetings throughout the year.
Wow. Okay. So there's almost like training on board almost.
Yeah. You don't really have to like have experience with it. You just, if you want to do it, you want to learn about it, because it is like, it's student run, it's students doing it. So we're not like requiring you to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember when I was working with some student journals in my undergrad, it was the same thing. We sort of learned on the job, and there's a lot of work to it, and in different ways. But with students as well, can they be from any major? And that's one thing I just want to annotate with this is, if you can join to work as an editor, especially as a student, and there's a journal that's open to a wide range of majors joining, do it. You will learn so much about the writing process doing it, and it's a good way to kind of have more community in a lot of ways, and that's what Junior will talk about here in just a second. Or should they be professional writing?
Yeah. No, they can be in any major. We asked them if like they've taken some, like our 2 editing classes that we have, the substantive editing and then the like basically copy editing classes. We asked if they've taken them, but they don't have to have, because we have a style guide. So we just basically like ask them to follow that for the junior editors. The senior editors are the ones who do substantive editing. So it would make more sense for them to have like some experience with it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then how long have you been with Invetsio?
Last year.
No, okay.
Yeah, last year I was the junior editor for poetry, like when they sent out the call for editors. And then over the summer, Lisa contacted me to be the assistant editor-in-chief, and I was like, that sounds like fun. So yeah, so like I guess like a year and a half.
Yeah, that's great. And I like that. It was similar to when I was working on it. I think I started doing fiction at first, and then I moved into a more like associate assistant editor role. So you get a lot of like movement too, it seems like, in these kind of spaces.
Yeah, you get like different experiences, and it is good experience because like we don't like nobody's expecting you to know everything. It is like about learning about like the process of editing and going back and forth and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you that about editing for that reason, just because what I'm enamored by with Inventio is that, as you sort of say, like at the bottom with submission guidelines, like you don't have to be an English or professional writing major. You can submit stuff if you're a current student, undergraduate student. And just looking at like who's been published lately, there's someone from kinesiology, they've had different majors and stuff. So I find that really interesting. And, especially I think as a student, if I were to see that, I think I'd be more inspired to submit and not feel like it's kind of gatekeeping, right? Which, it seems like it's natural for English and professional writers to want to submit stuff, but you might have like a great story to tell no matter what major you're coming from. All right, so let me just cut real quick to showing you all what I mean by that, because I realize like actually doing this at the same time maybe a little tricky. So if I show the entire screen, I think we can get to showing that in just a second. Okay, so that's the entire screen. And yeah, so what was really cool is I was looking at some of the publications, and yeah, we can see that here, just to sort of reiterate, if we look at the bottom, this was my I'm a bat and studying kinesiology at York. So like just the bio that we can sort of see here, I think that really great, interesting pieces we sort of see playing with like the web and so forth, and just trying to encourage submissions from a wide range of folks. So they publish fiction, nonfiction, poetry, etc., and then also ask for bios and things like that. And they get back to you really quickly. Sometimes it takes months for editors to get back to you about this sort of stuff, but with them it's 10 days. And again, you can join throughout the year. There's like recruitment and so forth. So be thinking a little bit about that. All right, let's turn back to the chat. I'm going to hide this on streams. Here. Okay. There's me with the awkward face. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people like to write on the side and stuff, and this is just like it's a good opportunity. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, because that's the point. Like we work with you, like like we want it, like as long as we see potential and there's something there, like we will probably say yes.
Yeah. So when you say work with students, again, that was another thing I was reading about on the story that was published on our site, that the kind of writer-editor relationship is closer than I think I often see, like in some fields. It's like when you get up to some place, you don't see it as much. But could you tell me a bit about that that kind of dynamic between writers and editors, maybe how it's worked recently for a project or something like that at Inventio?
Yeah, so Lisa talks to the authors, like just her, just so it's like not confusing, like who stuff is coming from. But we tell the authors how it's gonna go, like when they're gonna get published, when we're gonna start editing, like the process of it basically. And then the junior editors do the copy editing stuff. The senior editors look over that and do the more substantive editing. And then me and Lisa look over all of that and then send it to them. And they don't have to say yes to all of our edits, because we do everything in Google Docs. So you can, and we do it with the comments. So you can see what we're kind of suggesting, but you can like ask the authors can like ask a question back if they, if they don't want to do it, or if they like are unsure of it, or they're confused by it or something like that. And yeah, like we go back and forth kind of with the edits and stuff like that. And then like once they're published, we promote their work on Instagram, like stuff like that. And we ask them like kind of like for our promo how their experience was with us. And then
really?
Yeah, and then we put that on our Instagram too. So
okay.
And then even if we like say no, to a submission, we'll give like reasons for why we said no and how we think it could improve and stuff like that. And we always encourage people to submit something else, because it's not like if you submit once, you can't submit again. You can always, you can keep going.
Yeah, this is really encouraging. I've certainly in my early 20s, we sent something to just a random journal and we'll get a form message back. So it's nice that you're giving them actual feedback and having some good solid reasons. That's what I have to tell students, and I've had to tell myself, use that energy to maybe think about publishing elsewhere at some point, you know, with what you, instead of just saying it's over, it's sometimes it's just the beginning of a project you're working on, right?
Yeah, it's really nice. And I think the authors do like appreciate it a lot, because a lot of times like we get emails back saying like, thank you, like, you know, like this is helpful, stuff like that. Like I definitely do think like it does encourage them. Like I don't think it's something that is like, yeah, you're done or something like that.
So tell me about the publishing cycle. Is it twice a year that you're doing? Okay.
It's 3 times a year.
3 times a year. Okay.
Yeah. So we just published in November. We published again in April, and then we publish again in June.
I got you. Okay. So you're,
yeah. So yeah, 3 times. And it's the same process every time. Like,
and what an impressive rate to be publishing in as a student in a student group, to actually, get that out there rather quickly. It's difficult to do that. Like I think we do it just twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, the journal I work with. And I would argue that students are sometimes working much harder than we are by taking multiple classes and so forth. You know, really putting in that time and then having time to edit. And this is all not part of like a, academic credit or anything like that. It's just their own drive. So really interesting.
Everything.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. And it's nice because it's online only. So you've got a bit more speed that you could work with print layouts and things like that. So, and then when is your next date for publishing? Did I see it's in March? Do I have that right? I'm looking up the guidelines right now, actually.
I think it should be, I think it's April 25th, something like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I'll confirm that and talk about it on the stream as well. So that's great. And I like that we don't accept any content that has been AI generated. Yeah, that's a tricky one to figure. I wonder, have you all been talking about that a little bit? Like how to tell and stuff? Yeah.
I don't know. We're not like, we're going off like, like hoping people are honest and stuff like that. Like we're not going to be like checking for it. But yeah, that's like, I think in like the last week, the council decided not to. I mean, it is like, it's student writing, right? Like I feel like that would kind of give like a big advantage. But I mean, like we'll see how it goes, like how much students use AI, because in our submission guidelines, I think if we haven't yet, we're going to have like a question asking like, did you use AI? Because obviously like a lot of people use it for research and stuff like that. So like we can use that to gauge how we'll use AI, like how we'll treat AI like going forward, because it is very new.
Yeah, it's the frontier of these kind of questions in the editorial and writing space. So I think it's an exciting time to be an editor, to see how teams work with it and stuff. Okay, so you're working through submissions. I think your cycle has you've just taken in submissions recently for the next issue and things like that. Did you get a number of how did the submission process go? I mean, you don't have to say anything specifically about them, but yeah, I mean, like, what are you doing right now in your role?
So we're just we're just waiting for submissions to come in. I mean, they are coming in. And then when they come in, we, like, me and Lisa discuss like what we like about it, what we don't like if we think it should be accepted or not. And after they submit to us, like within 10 days, we get back to them.
10 days. Wow.
Yeah. Usually, like, that's the latest. Usually it's sooner. But yeah, and then we're doing stuff like with our editors too. Like we just a few weeks ago we finished interviews with them. We're gonna give quizzes back soon, and then we're gonna do a meeting with all the new editors because we have a lot of new editors. I don't know, like 5 to 7, something like that. And a lot of them aren't in professional writing, so or English or anything like that. So it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be really fun because like we did the interviews and everyone seems like super excited like to join and learn. Like, yeah, so it's nice. It's an exciting time. It's before, because all the editing we do, the submissions, I think they close on March 17th. So all the editing we do and the back and forth with the authors happens like in that like month.
Wow. This is kind of a recruitment question for anybody who's interested in Inventio. Why do you think current undergraduates should think about working as an editor for a journal like Inventio?
I think it's fun. I think it's a fun environment. It's like you get to meet people who are also like have like similar interests to you, and you get to learn, and it's not a huge like time commitment kind of like towards for that month. That's where like most of the work comes in, but like for the most part it's not. It is like, and yeah, like we like it is like collaborative. Like if you're, even though the editors like they don't work with the authors, like we work with each other a lot, like the juniors and seniors of each genre, they work together, and then obviously like me and Lisa are always in contact with them too. And yeah, it's just like it's kind of like I wouldn't say no pressure, obviously, because any work is pressure, but like it's not a lot of pressure, and you get to learn a lot without like having to know it before you come into it, kind of.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's no grade, right? It's just, things like that. And how about just for you personally, like, I was wondering, I always ask editors this, how has kind of editing maybe shaped or impacted or influenced like your own writing, whether it's creative, critical, etc.?
I mean, like I don't like writing that much. Like I write for school, but I do like writing essays and stuff like that for school. I think it's kind of made me like kind of like find my voice in my own writing like easier, because I know when I used to edit like other people's work, I would kind of like, it would be hard to not put my own voice in it, like what I would do. And what I've learned is like to kind of like hold back a little bit, because you do, like everyone has their own voice in their writing, and like what you want to do like as an editor is like let their voice like come through, like that is your job. So that's, I mean, yeah, like I like editing, like that's where my passion lies.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I know a lot of people who prefer doing editing versus writing, works with some amazing editors like that. And I think, also I wonder if any other editors have said stuff about just the kind of peer review process. I do when I'm sitting down with students and I'm saying like, let's talk about each other's work and talk to each other. It's, it's a hard space to be in sometimes. And I think just if you hopefully with some of those those of you who have that edit experience feel a little more okay with just saying like, this is what I'm seeing with your work, and here I can help you find your voice, as you were saying. That's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Because like I think a lot with me, like when I edit, I'm kind of scared of like hurting people's feelings and stuff like that. But like you just have to, as long as it comes from like a good place and you say it like kind of like with love, I guess, and you're doing it, like whatever you're saying is to help the other person. So like I don't know, I like when I like getting feedback on my work, because any like collaboration like that, it will always like improve your writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a ongoing dialogue, right? And there's some kind of problem you're trying to work out, or some affirmation, something of that sort. And okay, so yeah, super grateful to Junior for talking with me about Inventio and all the good things that that come from that. So best of luck to that editorial team, and for you as well. If you're thinking about submitting, please do. It's a fantastic place to get published. And I think that while it's always fine or interesting to try to just shoot for the top place, you might be looking for, regardless of where you're going, looking to work with student journals, maybe lesser known journals, publishing in those spaces and citing those spaces is really exciting. So yeah, let's go ahead and cut to a real quick break, and we'll be back to talk with another special guest. Okay, thanks. Start myself off and do that. Play some music. There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the stream. What a great chat we had with Dunya about Inventio and publishing practices. Super grateful for the time that Dunya had with me last night to talk a little bit about, what goes on into the writing process and so forth. So next, I'm very excited to welcome author and streamer Ms. Trouble Swift. Thank you for joining us, who streams on Twitch weekly under the name Swiftness Author. I want to say a couple words before I bring her on. Swiftness Author, as she's known on Twitch, a huge help when I was working on this project called 100 Days of Writing on Twitch, streaming my process. And, I kind of just learn as I go when I'm working with programs like Scrivener and so forth out here. And, was just amazed by how many writers are out there working week to week on Twitch and writing and being really open about process and community and things like that. It's just something I didn't even really consider that much when I was working. I was very lonely out in the Twitch space. And so this was very, very kind and talking to me, giving me lots of different tips on writing process and even just sharing the struggle. It's just sometimes you don't have many words to say. So this is a fantasy author who lives in a world where there are glowing costumes, fantasy stories, and blurs galore. When she's not writing, you can find her playing video games. We need to talk about that, by the way. Watching large amounts of TV and costuming her little glowy heart out at sci-fi and fantasy conventions, which there's another one coming up soon. And I was just very interested, like, in this idea of being laid off in game testing and localization and finding the journey to write. You know, I was laid off from my work as a journalist. I found my passion, which is academia, and here I am. We're connecting. We're going to talk. So let me bring her on to the program, and we'll talk for a little bit about all things writing. That sounds good. Okay. Hi, Swift.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello. Good time zone to everyone.
Yes. How's your day going?
It's going okay. Had to stop off at the garage.
That's right. We were talking yesterday on your stream about your car, right?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And everything good with that? Or you just got another...
Well, I'm just waiting for a phone call.
Oh, yes. Okay. So if you get that during this, no problem at all. I know that they... but yeah, that's always, a thing. Just like I sometimes will take my laptop or something else. And what's that?
Quite so dark. Sorry. Turned on some light.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I think this is also cut off a little bit. Let me drag this over here. There we go. Yeah, like I'll take my laptop with me sometimes and just try to work, but it's not the most conducive environment, I think, for writing. So, well, welcome to the program. And like I said before we brought you on, I was very excited to talk with you about this. And I've kind of been silent on Twitch lately, and you're still doing it. I've just been hiding. After I finished my book, I was like, what else is there to do? I don't know. But you've been streaming, all the way through. And I think that's awesome. Just constantly being open about your processes. But yeah, I have a couple questions for you, if that's okay. We can...
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah. So when I tune in, you are working for several hours on manuscripts, books in progress and things like that. What are you working on at the moment?
I am working on edits for the first novel in my new series, Dream Chaser. It's something I ran a Kickstarter on it back in October, November.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see if you see it right there, Dream Chaser.
This one. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent.
Dreambreaker is the prequel.
Nice.
That'll come next.
Okay.
So
you're working on that at the moment?
Yeah, I did that.
Okay.
I'm working, just try to get that so I can get it to an editor.
Yeah.
So I can switch back to working on my other series. So I alternate series. So
yeah, excellent. I know we've kind of talked about that a little bit on our respective streams, like sort of chunking different tasks, right? Like you'll work on this, then move into more admin stuff, or switch to between these two. It seems pretty like a good kind of cross training, so to say. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So I was wondering, like, we met on Twitch about a year ago. I remember. Yeah, just randomly. I think so. It was the Tiger Rights had rated the channel, and I was like, "Who are these people? What?" I was like, I don't feel so alone anymore. And I think
no longer screaming into the void.
Exactly. As much as I want to, sometimes I've seen some pretty painful times on there, but you were saying hello and really quickly gave me some good advice about tracking and stuff on Scrivener. When did you start streaming on Twitch?
October 2019.
2019. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
So I started off doing on some author readings. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So like particular other books of
Yeah,
that-
I had
okay.
just released the first book in my Just a Card G series, and then
Mhm.
it was one of the first times I'd put it on a price promo. So
Mm,
I
okay.
read some from the selections from it.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that has been something I had to get like I had to work through the uncomfort of doing like editing
Yeah.
live and reading back parts of it and stuff. So but like what kind of inspired you to start uh streaming things like that?
Well, I'd been watching Twitch for some
Mhm.
time, off and on. But, I was just like, well, how do you do an author reading if you want to do like a cover reveal or something? And then
Mhm.
I think I looked into it, and they were like, well, that's what Twitch was made for, you know? So I was like, okay. So you just kind of hop on, and then I just did it. I figured out which program to use, and I just kind of threw out an email invite to my list, and like, hey, here I am.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, do you think it's as easy as turning on the camera?
No, not entirely. Like,
Yeah.
it can be. I believe I did find and set up like an overlay first.
Mm.
I used Streamlabs OBS. They're like, that's one of the easiest ones, and it came with a bunch of like really easy like overlays. So I just picked one,
Absolutely.
and I'm still using it.
Yeah, if it works, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I was sort of just I remember starting and I said just why not? Like I'll turn it
Yeah.
on and not having really like any background, just my full like
Mhm.
screen recorded, and all that. And
Yeah.
just kind of learning as I went. It's a little
Very
yeah.
steep learning curve.
It,
You're like, okay,
it,
now what?
yeah, I mean, I can barely manage the chat, and I'm impressed. Like when I look at your setup, how you've got like the keyboard that we can see up here on the screen, and
Yep.
the chat on the right. It's a lot of work for one person, let alone
Well,
trying to write while you're doing it.
yeah, it's similar to how I guess you learned. And you asked, and you were sitting on your stream, and that's what I did. I was like, hey, how do you get the keyboard? Well, they're like, well, it's this program. I'm like, okay. They're like, what's your little dragon there? I'm like, well, it's this program. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
They're like, sure,
Actually,
you just do this and this and this, and I was like, they're like, well, how do you? I was like, wait, how do you make it so people can't see the text for spoilers? They're like, well, you use this, you do this. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah,
Actually, I did want to ask you about that because what we're looking at right now is Scrivener, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second.
Yep.
But like, yeah, for spoiling, especially if you're working like in creative realms like yourself, like
Mhm.
how do you actually obfuscate like that that part? Is it like
It's
is it a filter you put over?
Yeah, there's a digital filter. Like, let's see. I think both OBS and Streamlabs can do it. You basically go, you make like two screens. Like,
Mhm.
you take your main screen, you copy it, then like you adjust it so that the what do I call that? The resolution is really low.
Mm.
I learned it from, I believe it was Game of Tomes. They actually
Okay.
had some place where they had like the tutorials. So yeah, it's like a filter. You do some blur, you make it screen, and then like you stretch it out so that it looks blurry. And then I only cover up like the main text. I try and keep the sides fine so you can see that.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. I like didn't give myself the time to look up how to do that because I'll admit when I was streaming it first, like I think it was just in full high definition, like whatever
Yeah.
I was writing. And so
And
someone
then
would
you
say,
hear that
"Why?"
thing where it's like, what are you doing? And they're reading over your shoulder, and you're like, could you not
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, it's like backseat kind of a little bit. They say,
Backseating, yeah.
and it's like, why are you doing it that way? So I just kind of had to think like, okay, what I should probably explain, that stuff. But I think it was even in November, December, somebody was watching how I was coding and they're like, don't do that, do this. And that was helpful, I would say. But it's also just like, wow, you're on full display here. Wow.
So I heard there's this joke I always loved about, it's called the Desert Island Survival Kit. It's like how to get rescued. You're like, here's all the things you'll include. Then a deck of playing cards. Why? So you can start playing solitaire, and the second you start, someone comes along and says, put the 4 and the 6, and then you'll be rescued.
Yeah, it's easy to do that, right? Like, why do you know this way? Yeah, interesting. What advice do you have for streaming on Twitch? Like because I was asked that a couple times, and I think you've been asked that as well on your stream. Like,
don't worry about having fancy microphones and cameras and everything. See, I've used the headset. Also, if you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. A lot of Twitch writers don't. You don't need fancy overlays. You just need to figure out how to display your screen and how to input your voice, which is streaming software has come a long way now. A lot of them do that for you. So they'll okay, click here, put this here, and then you can just throw up your screen and go. Try and imagine that you're talking to a friend as well. That's another one. Or if you're like someone who may have already been like a teacher or have teacher experience, maybe you're giving a presentation, just try and be conversational.
Gotcha. Yeah. I noticed one thing that a lot of streamers do, including yourself, and I think it's pretty great for accessibility, especially, is reading back what people write you and kind of thinking of like it's an acknowledgement. I see you, and then using that as like a jumping off point and so forth. Yeah. Did you? Oh, go ahead.
I was like, you, and if someone asks you a question, you read it back. It's definitely an accessibility thing. Sometimes people have you muted, or sometimes people aren't looking at their screens. So it's a good way to keep people who don't have you on screen involved in the chat.
And you as well, like we'll talk in a minute about sprints, but it's I get the impression sometimes, like myself, I'll have I think that's a good point about like having it on in the background, because for me, like this is kind of like a coffee shop. Like we're hanging out together. I'm working on stuff. You're just showing it on screen, so it's comforting sometimes just to have it like ambient air almost.
And also, pro tip, if you mute within Twitch, you don't count as a view. So if you're trying to support a streamer and you want to support them as a view but not hear it, you'll either have to mute the tab in your browser or you turn down the volume really low.
Okay, so I should do this.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
But what is it? Firefox gives you the option to mute the tab, and Chrome gives you the option to mute the site. And those keep the Twitch volume normal, but it allows you to still count as a view. Okay.
Yeah. One thing too, like how things are sort of tracked and monitored that way. Because I think if I'm just hanging out and I've got the volume down, it's still like interesting to turn back. Oh, like what's she working on? Oh, awesome. And see that process. So what is your favorite thing to do on stream? That's a big general question.
It's like, wow, it is. I don't know. It's just riff and like talk out loud. Just about, when you're talking through a problem, sometimes it can be weird, like when you're not talking to anyone, but sometimes when you're on stream, it feels more like you're talking to someone else. So it's not like you're sitting in your room just chatting to the air. So sometimes being on Twitch, you can talk through a problem. And, every now and then you'll just be talking and you may think no one's listening. Then next someone pipes up with, how about this? And you're like, Oh, great! Thanks. It was a great idea.
Yeah. There's even that term which seems like it's acceptable. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a productive thing, like among writers on Twitch, is to lurk,
Yes.
right, and then kind of pop in. And even just, I love that, like, people are even so polite. They'll say, "I'm gonna lurk for a bit. Like, keep going, and I'll tune in later." And instead of just disappearing, which is likely also acceptable, but yeah, it's so kind that people.
Oh yeah, if you've been lurking is a proud internet tradition back from the days of yore of just forums, where a lot of times maybe it's a Facebook group now, forums, or someone's Twitter feed, long time listener, first time caller, or first time chatter. So a lot of people, they would just sit there and they'd watch or read their favorite boards, streams, Twitch writers, whatever. Then after some time, you're like, hey. And then, of course, you slink back into the shadows. So you're like, hey, don't. It's like, I'm kind of like, I'm going in silent mode so you don't have to sit here and entertain me.
Right. Interesting. Wow. One thing I noticed you do a lot of are sprints, and I got inspired by yourself and a number of writers who set a timer like somewhere on the screen and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. So we can kind of see here, like the Pomo focus.
Yep.
You've got 25 minutes roughly of work, and then, time for a break, things like that. And I want to mention one other thing. Sometimes we'll cut to like music breaks and talk about music and things like that, which another big fan of. Like, I was wondering, what are you listening to at the moment? Just for any like, especially working on the Dream books. Like, what are you working with?
Right now, when I try to avoid like music, because you're starting there, you're like, So I use like a site for like a tabletop audio where they allow you. They have pre-made themes, but you can also make your own, like let's see, soundscape. Let me think. I actually think I have a link to the one I use.
Oh, okay, cool.
So basically, allows you to make custom soundscape. So when I'm working on the Dream books, there's a creepy house involved. So I do the creepy house.
Yeah, might as well. Yeah.
So, and then when my other series is water themed. So I have they have Age of Sail, you might see on there, or Giants of the Deep, in which case that's more like Lovecraftian and like the Abyss. So I put together like a little thing, and you can have it time and everything. So they also have nice little sounds. They're like royalty free.
Yeah.
Very important.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a hard thing too. Like, you want to share what you probably actually listen to, like when you're not on stream, but I've had to kind of carefully navigate that sometimes. And strangely enough, not see anything from Twitch, but then see it when it goes to YouTube. If I export it to there, it's challenging. But I haven't heard of this site. That's awesome.
Yeah. Another case of, like I said, I picked up just from other YouTubers or other Twitch streamers. So you're there, you're on their one site, and you're like, oh, what's this music? You're like, well, I got it from here, and you like type that in. So it's you said it builds on itself. Where I'm like, a lot of my stream, it's fancy because I've literally been in people's streams and gone, hey, what is this thing you're doing?
Yeah, I want to try that. Yeah, go for it. Like something like that. That's
I got that's how I found Pomo Focus. I found it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. The streamer. I think just it's kind of interesting sometimes just hacking together like different like cool things that people are doing, and I think that's why it seems it's important to be embedded in that community a little bit more. And I'm guilty of not doing it as much. Like I would write and then be like, oh, I gotta go make dinner or something like that. But but sometimes just having it on my phone, like at while I'm doing something else, playing a game at night and stuff, and you can really find writers all over all time zones. It seems like throughout the day working on something. Yeah. A couple more questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Love that. Yeah. So you and I have spoken like at length about Scrivener,
Yes.
things like that. What do you think are maybe some of the challenges that writers like have come to you about, or what have they said to you? And yeah, things like that.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of people. Goal setting is one. I think that's what I initially helped you out with. How you could learn your session word count. A lot of people didn't know. They don't know that you could do session word counts. Whether or not you can do how to do italics, inline annotations, so that like you can see it when you're working on the document, but it won't appear when you export. So
yeah, that's right.
There's a couple different ways to do that. And it actually has a find by formatting. So if you put those in there, you can then go through and you can search those out. You go one. There's also revision mode.
Find by format. Oh, you can do find by formatting.
Yeah, if you go to a little down to where it says find.
Okay.
And you can see that maybe it has like there's revision mode. Revision mode, I believe, is underneath format revision mode.
Oh, okay. See. Oh, sorry. No, what did I do? Okay.
No.
This is what you would see every time. Revision mode is format.
So it might be somewhere slightly different on a Mac. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Okay. Oh, yeah. You know what? I never labeled these, but let me see what it. I just want to see what it did.
Yeah. It comes with some built-ins. So.
Okay. Yeah, I totally. I just didn't even. That's.
So if you turn that on, like if you saw the color, it was color coded. So starting from this moment, everything you would do would be like typed in like purple.
Okay, and then from there it's going. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
How about that?
So you can see at a glance when you're looking at your documents, if you're using a revision mode, like whatever text you do that. There's like comments and annotations.
I see. Okay. And then there was the one that the focus mode was the one thing that.
Oh yeah. I think let's see, it's under edits maybe. I think that the Mac one is much better than the PC one, because the PC one basically allows you to do dialogue only, whereas at least the Mac one used to be able to do different parts of speech more than dialogue. So
interesting. Okay.
I think it's under edit.
Okay. And then now, as someone who used to do game testing, you're seeing this live now. Somebody's just failing through this. Like, I know. I will find. Yeah, I think I'll find. There was something. I remember too. There was like a shortcut because I could just do it.
Like it might be Win L. Yeah. Well, in addition to being in game testing, I did work briefly in IT.
Is that right?
In tech support. Yeah. So I'm like, here's how you go, and here's where you can find your shortcuts, and so.
Sometimes you're like, let me just take control of the computer and show you, what this looks like.
I put on my little old hat. In my day, we couldn't take over your computer. I literally have to walk you through it on the phone blind.
Yeah. Composition. There it is. Okay. I think that was one that, yeah. And I know I would take a bunch of calls. I was working for my master's with a, and
then focus mode is something different. There's parts of speech and focus mode or literary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So focus mode takes away all your distractions and just your text, and you can have it set up so it works like a typewriter, where the line you're working on, just kind of everything else scrolls up and it just stays center of the screen.
Move focus to focus off, view focus. Okay. What? Okay. Wait. I'm gonna find this. I'm just gonna do it. I just typed it in and it's not. Okay, that says.
Let me see if I can. Was it edit and view?
Text editing.
It's like focused mode. It's like a composition mode. Sorry, composition mode.
Composition. That's the one. Okay. Okay.
And
Let's see, yeah.
linguistic focus is the writing tool one.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see. I see. Just do
Or on
that.
Windows, it's called dialogue focus.
Okay.
Because in that
I'm
case, it
gonna
only does. Yes.
focus off. We're gonna. Okay. No more struggle.
I've been using Scrivener for 2014.
Yeah.
Like one of the first times I started with National Novel Writing Month. So they had like the 30-day trial. And then of course, like, yay, I win, and then I got the coupon, and so half off at the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's really robust. I think, like as you're saying, like I'm learning new stuff every time, and it really helped me get through like almost all of the book. I think even there was one thing I found that was super cool about it was you could copy special as markdown.
Yes.
And things like that. And that was really helpful for like exporting everything, because you saw I was sort of moving between Scrivener and then HTML, and it's just a lot. So this is highly recommended. I wish it weren't like so expensive, especially with I'm talking to students and stuff, and just trying to, get the constant upgrades and stuff. It's a little tricky.
Yeah. Like I said, your best bet is like they have like the Black Friday specials. Or since there's National Novel Writing, usually they offer a discount of 25 to 30% off for just participants. So you don't have to actually have one, but you'll get there's a bigger discount for winners.
Okay.
Sorry,
okay.
son, you need to be a winner.
Yeah, it's I have not done that yet, but again, like I think I've trying to think about how to adapt this to like working on scholarship, right? Because I think just the idea of coming together as a large group and trying to write that much in the next month or so.
Yeah.
It's got to be inspiring.
Not to be like a Scrivener salesperson, but their free trial is 30 days of usage, not 30 days continuous, but 30 days of use. So if you used it one day, closed it down, you come back, so 30 days.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, and you could certainly accomplish that like during National Novel Writing Month, and then see if you want to keep it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just had happened upon it like through doing some reviews for Writer's Digest at one point, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, it was one of those things of before when they didn't have the Mac version. You were just like,
yeah, difficult to do it, because that's all I've worked with. Like even when I was a journalist, we had very, very old ones.
Because at the time Google Docs weren't great. It won't.
No, not at all. It was hard to keep things, and I've lost so much writing from not having Google Docs too, like your computers and such. Yeah.
Well, I'll go with the fact that I don't use Google Docs because one of the reasons why I didn't was because I lost data.
Yeah.
So I guess I have a long time grudge.
Yeah. I usually will export it to Dropbox and stuff, like to keep it, because it's just easy. But I've had some even glitches that way. I think nothing's foolproof, right?
Yep. I'm a abuser of the undo key. So what I have found over the years is that a lot of programs, Word, a whole bunch, cannot deal with you if you spam the undo key. You get all sorts of weird things, and so the number of times I wound up losing some data because I undid it too much, and it just like, and the program would freak out. It would just like, ah!
It's like I'm always telling students, like, you have to have a backup on a backup. Like just like screenshot it. If my wheel is spinning at all on this, I am immediately going to screenshot it, and I've even done that. Like, and as much as I like sprinting, I've also tried those like things that delete it as you go, and just staring off in his face for 1 second, his head like wasted an entire session.
That's probably write or die, and that was actually the thing that got me into sprinting. Was people were like, sprinting. I was like, that can't work. You can't just put it up there and just do it. And then
Mhm.
I forgot how I got recommended it. It was maybe someone's blog or it came up. And I was like, okay, let me try this. So this was probably one of the first apps that was like a sprinting software that like let you know if you were drifting off into space and not typing. It does have a
Mhm.
destructo mode, but you do not have to turn that on. It is actually rather effective if you have a program that just starts flashing the screen
Mhm. Mhm.
or something.
Uh,
This one I think you could do like kittens to reward yourself or tarantulas to scare yourself if you stop writing. So it's just like, yeah.
I've had some students try this, yeah, and the kind of ear annoyance that you get with it when you're like it's
Yeah.
starting to blink at you and or sort of sound off the alarm. It is motivating to some degree. Like I
Yeah.
don't think it's good to do every once in a while and just try, right? But I wonder if anybody like just uses this every session because there's a lot of pressure to it, right?
Yeah.
And I think,
It was like probably right the year before I did NaNoWriMo for the first time.
Mhm.
Like I said, I used it and I was like, it can't work. The next thing you know, I had written something like 1,000 words. And then I hit a
Mm.
point where I actually wound up writing about 15,000 words from a Thursday to a Saturday or a Sunday
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
from like almost nothing. Because,
Yeah.
you just start it up and you're typing. So that's the other thing if I would say give someone like writing. We can be too critical and maybe we're starting to drift off into space. So if I were to say this, it's actually possible for you as a writer. You can write as fast as you type.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I think we get in our head too much and we're considering and thinking it. So when a program like this came along, it was just like it started to let you know, well, your attention's drifting. You should probably keep typing. Oh, you can't
Fantastic.
afford to go back and fix that typo. You've got to you got to keep going. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, or it's gonna be deleted or something like it's
Yeah.
fading. And I've even had like sore wrist after just doing for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
If you
I would
stop,
never,
it will delete
yeah.
it.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend set yourself for 30 minutes. Like I was doing 15 to 20 minutes sprints. And
Mhm.
for the average person, if you're doing two-finger typing, that's about 25 words, 25 to 35 words.
Yeah,
So if you multiply that by 20, how many words did you get? You just did 400 words.
yeah, exactly. I mean, small goals too. I think someone, one of your viewers yesterday, we were both talking about
Yeah.
like one sentence just to try to get back in. Like just do
Yeah.
one sentence per day.
One
See
sentence.
or 100 words, something like that.
Or 10 minutes. Well, that's the other type of sprint I've done. As far as productivity, I'm
Mhm.
going on, I think, 1,135 days of doing a minimum of 10 minutes a day.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
I mean,
you can 10 minutes a day. Like you can kind of figure out how to get 10 minutes. Maybe you're sitting in the line at a checkout or at your garage waiting.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So it's like,
So-
yeah, sitting down to write, that's hard. Writing for 10 minutes is a lot easier.
Absolutely, and then it gets longer as you go. You
Yeah.
can say, "Oh, now let's do 20. Let's do 30,"
It's
and
like a muscle. You flex it.
you do. And my muscle is drooping at this point. I've just been a
Yeah.
little. I think after I was exhausted, yeah, it was hard to get back into it. But I mean, you stream twice a week, right?
Yes.
Is that it? Okay, okay. And then you do the writing throughout that, and not just on the stream, which I think is another thing to really was hard. It was hard to remind myself to do that. Like, let's do some stuff off stream, and then kind of have that momentum.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm sitting there, I turn the camera on, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, let's what are we gonna do today? Let's just write.
Yep.
So Twitch has a tag of writers, and you can add so many different tags, right, for finding and stuff. I noticed you have writing, you have African American, you have many others that you put in here. Can you talk about the value of adding tags like that for Twitch specifically?
Well, at first they used to be limited. Twitch used to have its own like a curated list. But
Yeah.
now sometimes you can use it to find other Twitch streamers, or sometimes you look at the tags and you're like, hey, sometimes people put their pronouns there.
Yeah.
It's another way you can find English speaking tags, or like Portuguese, whatever language you might want. People of certain communities. So it just helps you find people. Is someone streaming Brandon Sanderson? No, sorry. I'll have to look at those later.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. Yeah.
Yes, as a side note, those are great. If you want writing advice, go watch the Sanderson lectures. But yeah, the tags help you find different communities. Similar to like channels. So if you're after something that doesn't have enough channel points, you can find people who are like, they have certain like friendly or whatever, whatever you are, like knitting or crochet, various games. They have things like, we talked about backseating briefly, like some of the tags are like backseating. You could find, like, if you're the person who can't restrain themselves from giving people advice on how to play a game, you can go for the backseating tag, or you can go for a no backseating, where you don't want to, if you're the type of person who doesn't like listening to other people give the streamer advice,
And then they're oftentimes listed around here too, like co-working, things like that we see. And yeah, I mean, just look, like, compared to games, you see thousands of viewers, like, or people who are streaming.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this one, is it's a really, like, I would argue, like, a pretty small community, roughly, of writers, like, I guess in the larger scheme of like people who are playing like Halo and other stuff like that.
It was also fun fact, Writers was actually a game. There was actually a game called Writers, but apparently we just kind of said, no, it's ours now.
Yeah, I remember adding, that's another one, right?
Let's do writing. I also think there was is there a coding or a programming one?
Yeah.
For programming, I think that was the thing why people chose Writers, because like the other ones of writing or authors or something was actually about people who are doing coding.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that, again, like, what's nice is people just are really open about who they are and stuff, and you can be found that way. Like, we see someone is just talking about ADHD friendly working.
Hold on one
and
second.
Also just what decisions about whether or not to use a camera and stuff like that. Like, I think it's something I was kind of grappling with in the book, was it is interesting to like show yourself, but what's the focus here? Is it yourself? Is it your writing? Or are they entwined? It's tricky, like, to decide what you're doing it for and for whom, right? Yeah. Okay, so two last questions. I've been loving this conversation. Do you have any streamers you recommend for writers and stuff that fellow writers follow?
Let's see.
What is that?
See,
let's just navigate around there a little bit.
The Tiger Writes.
Yes.
There's Travis Tavern Writing Society.
Tiger's live now, it looks like. Awesome.
Let's see. Base Prefect. That's the person who showed me how to use it's base_prefect. They showed me how to use, I got Pommel Focus from them. I believe there's Game of Tomes. That's like a nice general one. That one's most active when Nano is going on, though. Let's see. There's Coffee Quills.
Right. So Coffee was one of the first I met. Just randomly jumped on my stream and said, "Hey, come check this out." So excellent. I'm trying to think of who else was.
Oh, let's see. Sabularadia.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Let's see. Oh, there's like a few very chill, very welcoming people.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Lady Writes actually streams. Oh, there's All That Glitters is Prose.
Oh yes, and didn't we raid them yesterday?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm just running through them so I can make sure I get it like captured on the stream. But
Yep.
that's great. And most of these, like they're streaming pretty regularly, like yourself.
Yeah.
Just kind of checking in for a couple
Those are the ones
hours.
I who are usually streaming around the time I am. There's some others who stream at different times, so I can't always keep up with those folks.
Right. Yeah. And I know that they're sometimes like we're jumping in a chat while like we're working and stuff. It's hard, because I'm like, okay, after I'm done, I just want to pass out for a minute or something like that and
Yeah.
go sit in the dark with the with the screen off or something. It's
Oh,
interesting.
there's also writer Greg.
Writer Greg. Okay, I think I've been on Greg. Yeah, Travis, I've gone on his channel a couple times and chat. So yeah, you're making me miss it a lot. I need to get back more on doing it. Like actually just instant like hanging out a bit. Yeah, right. Okay, so last thing I want to ask you, you are ending you're doing another Kickstarter campaign coming up, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, is that on the
As I fulfill the one I'm currently working on, I'll probably be doing a special edition for the Just Card G. That's the current one. That's the one
Okay.
I ran it on Kickstarter, but you can actually continue it on Indiegogo, and this
Nice.
is for people who missed out on the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still get signed copies.
Mm-hmm.
Signed copies aren't going to be available on retailers because you can't really do that through Amazon or any of the other places. I
Mm-hmm.
thought this is a nice way. You get yourself a nice physical book. I'll
Mm-hmm.
get signed. A couple some there was was it wallpapers? Some
Mm-hmm.
wallpapers. Also gives people a chance to get the prequel. So this is basically and it'll get it early, so you'll be able to get it before it's on retailers.
Okay. Good. Yeah, that's nice to have that like direct line, right, and access that you can work because there's many more layers. Yeah, sorry, my internet's a little slow. I'm trying to.
Yep. And so this is the one for my upcoming. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I'll link it up in the show notes and stuff. So I've got your other stuff linked up as well. Okay, so we can find you Tuesdays and Thursdays. No, sorry, yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays on Twitch, right?
Yes, I stream Tuesdays and Thursdays starts between 10 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently on Thursdays that's what I call the music stream. So I chat and music stream.
Yeah.
But since I'm on the deadline, I haven't been doing it lately. But tomorrow I think I will be doing a tribute to David Crosby.
Okay. Yeah. You always got great
Crosby,
lips on there.
Stills and Nash. So yeah.
Excellent. I just, as someone who used to do music reporting, it's nice to like think about that entwining and an endless like research project someone can do about just what we listen to when we write. It's or we think about as like a mode. So well, Ms. Swift, so nice to talk to you. And we've talked many times textually and stuff in different ways. So real pleasure just to hear more about your process. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're interacting just in a different mode. So I'm going to link up to this. If you have the campaign, feel free you can chat me on Discord as well, and I'll put it in the notes. But other than that, good luck with finishing this project that's been supported on Indiegogo and for your next ones and switching. And I'll talk to you on your stream again. That's really great. Yeah. Okay. Bye. Have a good one.
May your words ever be in the right order.
Yes, thank you. All right. Have a good one. Okay. What a great chat, folks. So we are just about out of time for the stream here today. And again, it's so nice. I love talking about all kinds of topics related to writing. I love bringing in folks, in addition to myself, to talk about these sort of things. Just these kind of conversations are really good for just bringing community members as well, thinking about professional writers that are at York, but are also working out in the world, whether it's on Twitch and across different time zones and across genres. Certainly myself working in kind of nonfiction and scholarly realms, but also, kind of thinking about what kind of cross training, cross cultural, and cross creative, we might say, cross genre training, can we kind of get? Can we think about when we have these sort of conversations? So again, big thanks to Miss Swift for talking with me for today's stream, and we've got many more conversations kind of coming up. In addition, these conversations can continue in different ways. We mentioned Swift Stream. Definitely check that out. You'll even find me on there under the handle Rhetoric Rich. At times, just speaking of it, really in the chat and talking about all things writing. We love doing that. There are a couple of things I want to mention here on the stream before we head out, and that is sort of what is coming up over the next few weeks. It's related to writing and anti-racism, and especially during Black History Month. If we go to here, we've already talked about some of these things with Inventio and so forth. There's a couple other resources that I have linked to we may think about for the next few weeks. So here we go, a couple of them. Just need to pull up really quickly. These are in the chat as well. This is what I referenced last year. Always recommend folks look at this as well. When you're thinking about reviewing practices, the anti-racist scholarly reviewing practices set out by the field of writing studies and allied fields is really crucial. And in last year's stream, we talked about these at length when we spoke with two students who were working on another journal about environmental and A to Z kind of conditions. And again, one of the big takeaways from this are on mentorship, framing reviewer comments, and welcoming challenges to citation practices. So when we kind of do a citation audit, we're thinking about, canons of rhetoric and so forth. What are texts that may be outside of that canon that hasn't been sort of, ritualized in different ways, for the fields? How might we kind of push those boundaries a bit and acknowledge interdisciplinary thinking and working? Yeah, so check that out as well. I think we covered it at length in last year's stream, but certainly always warrants more conversation. Also, writing with color. This is something that I want to give a shout out to Matteo Sorelli in my class, Digital Authoring Practicum, who talked about this earlier this week. It is a Tumblr page that addresses numerous things to think about if you are writing with color, or if you're thinking about what to do. If you are not a person of color, but you're wanting to write about characters and so forth in that way. So numerous tips that are out there that they have frequently asked kind of questions and so forth. Not so much about writing process generally, but about what to do if you're trying to write about skin or something like describing the eyes of a particular person or skin tone. What are some do's and don'ts of writing with color? Some things like that you can think about. Backstory. I think we could spend a whole stream just on this as a workshop for sure. There's a couple other things I've got here as well that I want to link to before we head out. And somehow I lost every single link that I had when the stream started. So let me just pull it up for just a second. Bear with me. Okay. At the top of the hour, I mentioned that tomorrow we've got Dr. Christopher Morris's anti-racist writing workshop, free on Zoom. Check that out. And as the team is sort of writing here, and Dr. Morris was writing, become conscious of systematic bias and make your prose welcoming. What does it take, right? What are some strategies we can think about in order to become more conscious? I mentioned the kind of idea of color bias at the very beginning when my editor said, your pictures and everything are pretty white. Think about this more carefully. I think we have to do that work. We have to be uncomfortable. We have to push boundaries in order to be more inclusive in many ways. Secondly, this is also listed in the show notes, and this is actually happening as we speak, folks. Here in just a minute. This is Black History's Wikipedia and Wikidata Editathon. They did this last year, and I was sort of gesturing towards it in last year's stream, again, on reviewing anti-racist practices. But this is a But it's back again. It's a pan-university event helping celebrate Black History Month. And it's by Toronto Metropolitan. There are faculty and staff with York U who are participating. It's online. There's an editing session that happened. There was one that happened last week, but the kickoff panel event is today and totally free. So if you want to learn about that panel event, there's a great panel coming up on that. You don't have to do any editing. You won't doing any editing at all on that. But again, just thinking about who's going to help sort of lead this, and who are the voices who are contributing to this sort of editathon. I think it's super exciting. Now there are editing sessions starting in just a couple of days and for the rest of the month, and you'll get training on Wikipedia and what it means to edit. Right, that can be a contentious space sometimes of citation and arguments that kind of back channel. But in order to celebrate Black excellence and to bring out, many of the voices that again are just often overlooked and marginalized, even on Wikipedia, this is a space to do that work. So be thinking about that. And it's okay if you haven't edited. We talked earlier about Inventio welcoming in those who don't feel like they're editors. But if you want to learn, how it works in Wikipedia, you want to learn how Inventio works, check out some of these opportunities. Okay. Other than that, have a great rest of the week. I'm excited to come back. You will see other posts that will be here on our YouTube page as well as part of Black History Month. So look out for those. Look out for some other contributions as well on our pages and on our website and so forth. So other than that, have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.